Frank, the restrictions imposed by Measure M can only be amended through another ballot initiative. The city attorney said that, which means the voters of Santa Cruz would be responsible for changing the law again to keep builders remedy at bay, should it, ever come down. What if builders remedy does happen? I mean, what do we do then? We're stuck with the new Measure M regulations until someone puts it on the ballot again.
I trust the voters of Santa Cruz to know, to be informed about when we are getting even close to that situation where our housing element is at risk of being decertified. And so we will never get to that point. And the plan director even said so in your article today. He said that we don't have much of a risk of that happening in the next cycle, and probably not even the one after that. So I think that the voters can be kept informed about the situation. If the 25% is shutting down housing, that can be put back on the ballot. That part of it could be put back on the ballot by the city council. You don't even need signatures. Just go and they could do it that themselves. Also, the voters can decide to upzone on a selective basis when they think it is appropriate to do so. When it gets close to any risk of housing element decertification.
So you trust the voters in the city of Santa Cruz to be proactive about this
to be kept informed about it and to make informed decisions, yes.
Okay.
Can I
comment
on that? See, I think this is one of the things that is most troubling for me in this whole conversation, is that we get into this idea that we'll see what happens, we'll maybe the builder's remedy will kick in a few years and then we'll have to do something about it. And all these different things of, we'll wait a little bit more and see what happens. We've been waiting for 40 years to build enough housing. And people in this community who need it have been waiting that long. And we're not gonna wait another 5 years. I mean, we can, because I bet everyone in this room, maybe one of you isn't housed, but I bet almost all of you are housed. But there's a whole bunch of people who aren't here, who aren't housed, or are living in Salinas, coming to work in Santa Cruz, because there isn't enough housing here and we haven't built enough housing here. And they don't want to wait another 5 years to see if Frank's right or not. I don't want to wait that long either.
Okay, I want to move to an audience question. Why was, and you both will have a minute 30 to answer this one. Why was Measure M written in a way to make all development, including 100% affordable housing projects, subject to a vote? Would you oppose a 100% affordable housing tower? Let's start with Frank.
Absolutely not, and that is not correct. Those types of projects are not subject to a vote. I mean, that would be something that would be you could do under a state density bonus, and you could build 100% density bonus if you had that much affordable.
Don?
There's a lot to that there will be a certain margin in between that wouldn't, where affordable can go taller because of the density bonus. But it's not unlimited. So I think Frank is only half right there, that if even 100% affordable project, even with its density bonus, goes beyond, needs more stories to make it work, we got to vote of the people again.
Yes. Okay, so another audience question here. How do you, in minute 30, again, Ruby, how do you expect our kids that are moving away to afford these mostly market rate studio or one bedroom apartments that most of this development will create? And I think they're talking about just most of new development will create. And Don, we can start with you.
Yeah, there's, one of the ways is when we have more housing available, that a lot of my kids, my daughter who lives in Davis, who's going to move back to Santa Cruz, makes, her and her husband make a nice, solid, middle income salary, so they can afford to pay a market rate here. What they can't do is buy a house here. So what they're doing is they're moving into my house, and I'm moving into my ADU behind them. And that's what it's come to, is even people, And again, I know we can just disagree about this, but we can't just wait for these 100% affordable projects to solve our problem. There's just not enough money in our community to build thousands of affordable units. So we need market rate units at the middle income, rental housing, if it's really focused on rental, really focused on smaller units. Those may not be, it's what I said at the beginning, yeah, they're more than we would like to pay. We all go, oh, that's kind of a lot. But people who want to live here or need to live here because they're working in a school here or at UCSC or at Cabrillo or at a medical clinic, they need that middle income apartment.
Frank?
The developers are not building middle income apartments. They are building the 3,000 to 4,000 a month, one bedroom studios and one bedrooms. That's what they're building. And they're all very small units. They're not, very few of them are even 2 bedrooms. None are 3 that I've seen. And so that's what the developers are doing. They're not going to be altruistic and charge lower than they can get, and that market, like I mentioned, the tech worker market is huge, and they have a lot of money, and they can pay these exorbitant rents.
Okay. I want to move on to one of my questions, then we'll get to another audience question, and then we will go to a lightning round and lightening it up. Okay. So clearly Measure M and its intent has struck a chord among Santa Cruz voters. I mean, in a lot of ways, this could be seen as a revolt against what's been happening at City Hall. I mean, housing for people, whether you agree with them or not, collected way more signatures than necessary to get this on the ballot, and they did it in relative warp speed, just a few months. Don, regardless of Measure M's fate, what message do you think this sends to city leaders that we've even gotten to this point, and what needs to improve?
I think it sends 2 messages. One is that people don't like big buildings. That's, and the other message it sends that I think they're working on is that they need to really help the community understand that the state is serious about us building a lot of housing here. And they're not just serious about it in Santa Cruz, they're doing it in every community in the state. And I think so many people who are upset about what's happening in terms of more housing, multifamily, multi-story buildings, is that they are used to being able to say, we don't want that near us. And the state is saying, too bad. And the city council is obeying the state law. And then people still come to city council meetings and say, well, you shouldn't obey the state law. Well, that's not really how this works. Elected officials take an oath of office. They follow the law. So if we all want to change, I don't personally want to change most of those state laws, but if people in this room want to change those state laws, they should do that, but they should not be blaming the city council and the board of supervisors for approving projects that are required to be approved.
And Frank, and on the same topic, I mean, if Measure M doesn't pass, I mean, how do you want to see the community, or how do you want to make sure the community is better brought along in this process so they don't see that another Measure M is necessary in the future?
I just don't see the city changing course if Measure M doesn't pass. I think that it needs to pass. And we're going to have plenty of multi-story, multi-family development under existing zoning, all along the corridors, all throughout south of Laurel, downtown, lots. There's going to be lots of big buildings with lots of units. And we're just saying let the people have a vote if the skyscrapers are going to be proposed, and let them have a say in the matter. I think that is what Measure M is all about, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, with direct democracy.
Yeah, you may.
May I just, thank you. That part would hold up if we were able to know for sure that the 25% inclusionary requirement wasn't an impediment. But I think we have a lot of evidence that it is. So all these places that Frank is certain are going to have lots of projects all over the place, up downtown and every corridor, no, it's not going to happen. Because the developers who have, you know, everyone sees a few new big buildings and are pretty upset about that. I know that. I'm not, but a lot of my friends are. I know the sentiment. And, you know, that's just we're gonna have to deal with that.
So, how are the developers of the downtown plan expansion area south of Laurel able to do 20% net affordable if it doesn't pencil out? I mean, the Kaiser Marston report said it's impossible. That will never work. And so somehow it can work south of Laurel, and they have not just only pencil out, they have money left over for a 3,000 seat stadium. How does that work?
I'll give you an example that almost all of you are probably familiar with as a way that could happen. So the project that probably has put more people up in arms than any other in the community is what I call the Taco Bell project, right, at Laurel and Pacific. So that project is roughly 200 market rate apartments. Right next door, I'm not sure everyone knows this, but right adjacent to it, there's a separate building that is not part of that project. It looks like it pretty much is, but it isn't. And that's 100% affordable apartments. And that was done because the city made a deal, which some criticize and I think was fantastic, that said, you build your thing, market rate, right next to it, you give us the land, and we'll give that to a nonprofit housing developer, and they'll build way more units there than you would have in your inclusionary. You would have built, you know, like 30 units. We're getting 85 instead. So that's how, if you do an area plan and you turn some of the land over to a nonprofit developer, they can end up, our net affordable housing in a region like that could be 20%.
And Don, why do you think that's more attractive to a developer, though, to do that kind of thing where they buy a whole separate parcel and then donate it rather than just include the units in their property?
Because of that, because it's cheaper for them, but it also generates more housing units. It's like, to me, this is like the classic win-win. There's nothing wrong with a developer saying, hey, I'd like to make my project pencil out better. So they do that, and then by buying the land and donating it, giving it to a nonprofit, we get way more affordable units. That's great.
By my calculations, that's even over 25%.
Right.
So you're saying it's possible?
I'm saying it's possible if you don't do it as an inclusionary. You're saying it has to be.
No,
it wasn't
yes.
inclusionary.
Yeah.
That was an exception rather than being inclusionary.
Well, inclusionary can be in lieu. You can give land, or you can pay into a fund. So it sounds like 25% is perfectly possible.
If there's some land right next door.
It doesn't have to be next door. It could be down the block. It could be a few blocks away.
Do you know what the inclusionary ordinance says for the city of Santa Cruz on that subject?
It
says it should be very rare and exceptional that the opportunity to build affordable housing off-site, and so it can't just be done willy-nilly. It has to be done in really unique circumstances. So that unique circumstance might be where we have a huge opportunity to build hundreds and hundreds of units, including hundreds of affordable units, and get an arena. That's the kind of deal that works for everybody, but it doesn't work in every situation.
It sounds like it's possible to do 25% inclusionary.
It sounds like in your dreams it's possible.
No, it's possible in those two examples.
And just want to point out clarification there. We don't know yet if the 20% net and the 1,600 unit, that we don't know if that will all pencil out yet. We haven't seen the plans. So it hasn't been determined yet that is going to work, the 20% requirement in downtown expansion plan. Just yet. The city's working on it, but we haven't seen anything firm. So I want to move on to one more audience question. So the RENA number, the 3,736 units, do you consider this number to be too few, too many, or just about right for the year 2031? We'll start with Frank.
Well, all I know is that that number is 5 times higher than it was the previous cycle. Last cycle we had 750, now we have 3,750. And that is pretty egregious. The region as a whole, that's supposed to divide it up in each city in the region is supposed to get their fair share, right? We got a 5-fold increase, but the rest of the region only got a 3-fold increase. So somehow Santa Cruz got foisted on it 5 times the number that we had last time. And the other cities in our region, going down to Carmel and entire Monterey Bay, they are benefiting from Santa Cruz taking more than its fair share.
So too many.
Yeah.
Don?
I'd say it's a good number. I don't feel like I could speak with precision, but I don't think it's too high. And I do want to comment on what Frank said, and I think it's so important to remember why certain places are designated for more and some for less, and that is, where do people work?
Silicon Valley.
People don't know. In the Santa Cruz region, more people work at UC Santa Cruz and in the downtown Santa Cruz area than any other local employer. No, nothing close to that in Watsonville or any of the small cities in between. So, where does it make sense to have those people live?
Silicon Valley.
For people who work at UCSC should live in Silicon Valley. No, that's what you just said. That's what the question I asked, and you said they should live in Silicon Valley. So that's a great idea. We'll even have more commuters going over the hill. No, the point is, obviously, that we are an employment center, one of the biggest employment centers on the Central Coast, and more people are commuting into Santa Cruz than into Capitola and Watsonville and a lot of the other communities along the coast. And that's, the housing needs allocation is based on that concept. We don't want people commuting long distances. We are not just an attractive place to live, we are actually an economic center, and we shouldn't be having thousands of people drive from Salinas to come to work in Santa Cruz every day. That's not good for our environment, it's not good for this community, it's not good for community building, and it's especially not good for those specific families who live with that reality.
And just to finish up there, whether it's too few, too many, just right, it is the reality. That is the number that Santa Cruz is going to have to move forward with. All right, we're going to move to the lightning round. We just got a couple minutes left. These are really just super quick answers. Like I said, usually reserved for candidates, but why not? Okay, so let's see. What was your first paying job? Start with Frank.
I think it was when I was delivering papers. When I was about 10 years old, I had on my bicycle a thing. I had to fold the papers and throw the papers, and that was it.
Paper
the green
boy.
sheet in Aptos.
That's great. Don?
I was a camp counselor.
All right. Favorite fresh produce from the region? Don, you can start.
Wait,
Favorite fresh produce?
Wow, that's a tough one. Great strawberries are awfully good.
All right.
I agree with that, but I also like kale. Ugh.
And leader who most inspires you? Start with Frank.
I like Barack Obama.
I'm right there with you.
All right, we'll end on that.
Maybe
panel,
I'll say
yeah.
Barack and Michelle together. Maybe is a good.
Okay, let's give them a round of applause. And thank you guys for doing this tonight. And that wraps up our